Due to these statements, Zegler has been labeled a PR nightmare.
What is it like for you now having all of this? I think it's a lot of pressure, right?
It's definitely a lot of pressure, but I surround myself with very good people who keep me grounded and try to just stay as true to myself as I possibly can.
With this video of Rachel Zegler alone in a theater watching herself. One of the most unlikable humans.
That
ever.
is sadder than when the original Snow White eats the apple.
She didn't just storm off. She didn't just argue. She allegedly threw a prop across the stage during the final Eva rehearsal. And now, that moment, the one insiders have been whispering about for weeks, has reportedly been caught on video.
I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have when I say that this has been the biggest adjustment of my life, like understanding the way my life operates now, being who I am, and the things that I've been so fortunate to make. It comes with so much ground that I never thought I would be able to cover.
According to multiple sources close to the production, the leaked footage shows the exact moment things spiraled. The scene is intense, emotionally raw. Rachel is mid-performance, then suddenly breaks character, shouts something off mic, and hurls what appears to be a rehearsal prop, possibly a scarf or a small handheld mic, clear across the stage. The cast freezes. The crew stops. And for a few long seconds, everything goes dead silent. This is the moment fans have been trying to piece together for weeks. The incident behind the lawsuit, the final straw before her removal, the chaos that led to leaked director notes calling her a nightmare to work with. And now, it's out.
This is just a huge attempt by her PR team to make her seem like she's apologetic for the things that she's said about Snow White and the things that she's said about the upcoming film coming out. Don't believe it.
The clip, which has reportedly been circulating in private West End group chats and media inboxes, is short, less than 30 seconds, but it's long enough to cause shockwaves. Not only does it confirm parts of the producer's original lawsuit, but it also raises new questions. Why was someone filming? Was this really spontaneous or something more calculated? Because if Rachel's recent countersuit is to be believed, the same one where she accuses the Evita team of creating a hostile work environment and leaking private rehearsal footage to destroy her reputation, then this clip might not be the smoking gun fans think it is. It might.
Have to be living under a rock to not know about all of the backlash that Rachel Zegler has been getting for being a complete bozo. Every time I see this video, I just keep reminding myself that she is an actress. You can tell that she's acting. Check this out.
And other people think I'm doing gracefully, and I don't think I'm doing it at all. So when I tell you that it's hard, I just mean to be inside my brain. That's hard.
It's so hard for me to go out there and be an actress and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rachel Zegler should probably come out and just throw all of the seven magical creatures under the bus and turn everybody's gaze to them so that way she stops taking so much heat.
And that's what's making this leak even more explosive. Because depending on who you believe, this wasn't a diva losing control. It was a young actress being pushed to her limit. So what exactly happened that day? What led to this moment? Who else was involved? And why does this one rehearsal, this one outburst, feel like the moment everything snapped? Let's rewind the tape. Because the day Rachel allegedly threw that prop wasn't just dramatic. It was the beginning of the end.
Unfortunately, the only thing I can really say is that that is not my story to tell. Those are not my updates to give. And in the film industry, when you are an actor, when you sign one of these contracts in the entertainment industry, I think a lot of people on the outside think that if you are somebody who has a lot of publicity around you and your name is attached to a project, that means that you have a ton of control or a ton of intel, but usually that is not the case. Unless you are Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively with all of their films apparently, or Margot Robbie in Barbie and you are also an executive producer. As an actor, you don't get to dictate anything. You don't get to dictate if a film actually happens. You don't get to dictate when it is shot, how it is shot, if you can ever speak about it to the public. You are simply just there to show up and say your lines and look the way they want you to look. That is our job, and that was my job on this production. So again, that's really all I can say.
It was supposed to be routine. The cast of Evita had gathered for what many assumed would be a standard final run-through. The house lights were dim. The tech crew was in position. Rehearsal scripts had already been phased out. Everyone knew their marks. Everyone knew the stakes, but even before the first note hit, insiders say the tension in the room was thick.
took a pause and realized what I was auditioning for. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part.
That same source claims Rachel skipped the usual warm-up, a red flag in theater culture. Instead of participating in vocal and movement exercises with the cast, she allegedly stayed seated off to the side, thumbing through notes and sipping from a branded water bottle in silence. By the time the rehearsal began, the mood was already strained.
It is the real beginning of my life as a young lady of America. Of America.
From the start, things felt off. Rachel reportedly missed a key stage cue in the opening act. A supporting actor, who hasn't been named, tried to subtly guide her back into position. That's when, according to multiple witnesses, Rachel responded curtly with, "I know where I'm supposed to be." The cast pushed on, but the cracks were showing.
I was actually, oddly enough, auditioning for a Broadway show of a very famous Broadway musical that was having a revival, and the producers and directors were ordering lunch while I was singing.
When you're there and you're trying to do your best, you've worked on this part, you spend hours and hours on end trying to get this character just down right for your big audition. And then if you have a producer or casting director sitting there and then eating food in front of you, yeah, it can be very annoying. Personally, I've never had that experience.
By the time they reached Don't Cry For Me, Argentina, the pressure had reportedly reached its boiling point. Rachel allegedly stumbled over the emotional blocking of the scene, skipping a turn, missing a dramatic drop to her knees, and the director called out corrections. This, according to sources, was the moment everything shifted. Rachel allegedly broke character, turned toward the production table, and paused. She looked visibly frustrated. The music kept playing, but her energy was gone, and then she raised her voice. Not loud enough to shout, but loud enough that everyone heard it. What she said exactly depends on who you ask, but what happened next? That was undeniable. Moments later, she reportedly grabbed a prop from a nearby set piece and threw it.
There was an in-depth piece, like a behind-the-scenes piece, talking about how they've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years.
It happened in a flash, but the impact lasted for hours. According to multiple insider accounts, the object Rachel threw wasn't heavy. It wasn't dangerous, but in that moment, it didn't need to be. It was symbolic, a breaking point. Some say it was a rolled-up rehearsal scarf from a costume change. Others say it was her marked-up script binder. One witness claimed it was just a paper prop, like a prop letter or note used in a scene. Whatever it was, it flew across the stage and landed with a loud, awkward slap against the floor. It didn't hit anyone, but the sound, the silence that followed was chilling. Everyone stopped. Not just the actors, not just the director, but the entire room froze. According to one chorus member who spoke anonymously, you could feel the air get sucked out of the room. People weren't angry. They were just stunned. Like, did that really just happen? Rachel reportedly stood still for a moment after the throw. No follow-up explanation, no apology, just a long pause, a look of visible frustration, and then she turned her back to the audience and walked to the side of the stage. Some say she muttered something under her breath. Something about being disrespected, something about not being a puppet. But none of it was caught on mic, and that's part of what's fueling the mystery. Then the reaction began. The director stood up from the table. A few stage crew whispered to each other. The stage manager called for a break, and the rest of the cast quietly left the stage one by one. One source claims a supporting cast member walked by Rachel and said that it was uncalled for. She didn't respond.
I've been told by a number of different people that this human being might be the worst or best, from some perspective, at breaking on set.
Yes. So he's a liar. Print that.
She was enjoying herself. That's okay.
And it was only with Jack Dylan Grazer. That was the only time I ever broke. No one else ever broke me, I don't think.
What makes this moment even more controversial is what allegedly happened right after the break. Instead of returning to the stage, Rachel stayed backstage. According to crew reports, she was pulled aside by the assistant director and 2 members of the production team. No one knows what was said, but she didn't return for the rest of rehearsal. An hour later, an internal rehearsal report was allegedly filed. Within it, the prop incident was documented in detail, along with the phrase, "This behavior was escalated, disruptive, and violated the company's conduct expectations." That phrase would later appear nearly word for word in the lawsuit, filed against her days later. And that's not the only thing that resurfaced, because now fans believe this was the exact moment that inspired the leaked nightmare to work with note from the director, the one that turned public opinion against Rachel, the one that started it all. But what's unclear is who leaked it and why, because if you believe Rachel's countersuit, this moment wasn't an accident. It was a trap. After the prop hit the stage floor, the silence was deafening. No one screamed, no one clapped back, no one tried to smooth it over. The moment felt like a pressure valve had finally burst, and everyone knew there was no going back. The stage manager, trying to maintain control, immediately called for a 10-minute break. But this wasn't the usual kind of pause. Cast members didn't joke around or stretch in the wings. They left the stage entirely. Some reportedly retreated to the dressing rooms. Others stood in small groups whispering backstage. Everyone was waiting to see what Rachel would do. She didn't say a word. Witnesses say she stayed planted near the wings, standing still, one hand on her hip, visibly shaking. Not crying, not apologizing, just locked in a kind of stunned, stubborn silence. According to a chorus member who later spoke to theater gossip blogs, one of the newer castmates looked terrified. She didn't know what to do. It was her first West End production, and she was watching the star of the show throw a prop across the stage in front of the director. That's not something you forget. After a few minutes, the assistant director reportedly approached Rachel and tried to de-escalate. No yelling, just a tense exchange in hushed voices. Rachel allegedly stood her ground and said, "You keep pushing me. You want a reaction? Now you got one." Those exact words, if true, could come back to haunt her or defend her, depending on who's telling the story. Rachel didn't return for the rest of the day. She left quietly before the break ended. No formal announcement, no meeting, just a text to her rep. By the end of the day, rumors were already swirling through the cast, and by the next morning, a phrase started circulating in backstage circles. That was the final straw. The same phrase that would later appear in leaked internal notes, the same one that painted Rachel as unmanageable, the same one that helped justify her removal. But now, thanks to the leaked footage, fans are asking something else. Was this really a breakdown, or was it a buildup? By the time the cast returned from the break, Rachel was gone. But the director wasn't, and he wasn't calm. According to multiple insiders, the director, whose name has been kept out of the press but is reportedly a longtime West End veteran, was visibly shaken. Not angry in a theatrical, over-the-top way, but in that cold, professional, "we're done here" kind of way. One source described his reaction as measured but final. Instead of lashing out, he allegedly walked straight to the stage manager and requested that a formal report be filed. Note in a rehearsal journal, this was documentation, the kind used for contracts, HR processes, and legal defense. By that evening, an internal memo was reportedly sent to producers and senior creatives. It included a detailed summary of the day's events, Rachel's alleged lateness, the misblocking, the verbal exchange, and, of course, the prop incident. That memo, according to one leak, ended with a short but damning sentence: "Lead talent has become a liability." The phrase was brief but brutal, and it spread fast. Within 24 hours, Rachel's name was allegedly removed from the internal call sheet for the next day's rehearsal. A replacement actress, the one later seen in the now viral leaked clip, was brought in as just a stand-in, according to production insiders. But everyone knew what that meant. It wasn't long before security got involved. Rachel wasn't forcibly dragged out like tabloids might suggest, but she was reportedly asked not to return to the venue until further notice. One crew member said the message was clear: "We're not going to fire you. We're going to freeze you out." The producers, knowing this could escalate, began preparing legal action, the same breach of contract lawsuit that would hit headlines just days later. But even they didn't expect what came next, because while they were preparing to bury her with documentation, Rachel was preparing her own version of the story, one that would claim the entire day. The meltdown, the memo, the freeze-out wasn't a natural consequence. It was a trap, The footage changed everything. It wasn't public at first, just a quiet clip floating through private group chats, casting circles and WhatsApp threads among West End insiders. But when it hit the internet, even in its grainy, out-of-focus quality, it ignited a firestorm. People had heard the rumors. They'd read the director's notes. They knew about the lawsuit. But now they were seeing something. And no matter how short the video was, it brought the story to life in a way that words never could. In the clip, you see Rachel mid-performance, reportedly during a high-intensity rehearsal scene. Her voice is raised, her body language tense. She breaks character, throws the object, and boom, freeze frame. You don't need to hear the audio to feel the tension. TikTok editors got to work immediately. Dozens of reaction breakdown clips popped up within hours. Some creators added slow motion. Others zoomed in on Rachel's expression. A few even tried to identify who was in the frame when the prop landed. The internet, as usual, split in two. Some saw it as proof she snapped. That's not how a lead behaves, they said. Others saw it as a setup. Why was someone recording? Who leaked this? Why now? On Twitter, theater professionals chimed in. One stage actor tweeted, "If I got filmed every time I cracked in rehearsal, I'd be canceled 5 times over." And yet, others weren't so forgiving. This isn't drama class. This is a professional production. There's no... Casting directors, PR reps, and even entertainment lawyers were now watching the fallout because it wasn't just about a thrown object anymore. It was about trust, professionalism, and public image, the kind of image that makes or breaks a career. Before the clip leaked, it was all he said. She said. There were whispers, memos, director notes, legal filings, but no one outside the theater had seen the moment that supposedly ended Rachel Zegler's run as Evita. It was all secondhand, until now. And with the footage out in the open, everything is being re-examined. At first glance, it looks exactly like what the producers described. Rachel breaks character, her voice rises, and then the prop flies. But when you watch closely, there's something off. She's clearly upset, but not screaming. The throw isn't violent. It's fast, but not aggressive. And the room doesn't erupt in chaos. It goes quiet. Uncomfortably quiet. That silence is what's raising eyebrows. Because if this was truly an uncontrolled meltdown, why didn't anyone react? Why was there no yelling? No crew stepping in immediately? Why does it feel expected? Some fans, and even a few theater commentators, believe the moment was deliberately provoked. Set up a way to push her to react, then document it. And Rachel's countersuit only adds fuel to that theory. Her legal team alleges that production staff created a hostile environment, isolated her, baited her into reacting, and then selectively leaked content to justify her removal. The footage, they claim, is part of that campaign. If that's true, then this clip isn't just a meltdown, it's evidence. Evidence of pressure, manipulation, and internal sabotage, all masked as discipline. But if the producers are right, if this was just the final in a string of reckless behaviors, then the footage seals the deal. It shows that Rachel cracked when the stakes were highest and that she wasn't ready for the role. That's why this one clip, just a few blurry seconds of drama, could shape the entire public narrative. It's no longer about what was said, it's about what was seen. And in the court of public opinion, video wins every time. So now we know what really happened, or at least what it looked like. The moment everyone's been talking about, the rehearsal that didn't end in applause or even notes, but with a cast frozen in silence and a prop hitting the ground. It's no longer a rumor. It's no longer a footnote in some director's leaked memo. It's a visual, a 27-second clip. That clip has been seen, shared, dissected, and debated by the entire internet. And now, Rachel Zegler's so-called meltdown has become more than just gossip. It's a turning point, because depending on which side you're on, that clip is either proof that she couldn't handle the pressure or evidence that she was pushed until she snapped. What's impossible to ignore is how much weight this one incident now carries. What looked like an emotional outburst in the heat of rehearsal has turned into the cornerstone of 2 lawsuits, a corporate PR crisis, and a fan base split right down the middle. Some are calling it unprofessional, others are calling it human, and that's the problem with footage like this. It doesn't come with a timeline. It doesn't show the days and weeks of tension building up. It doesn't capture the ignored emails, the passive-aggressive notes, or the private conversations we'll probably never hear. It just shows a moment. one moment, out of context. Explosive, viral, and in the digital age, that's all it takes. Because when people see that prop flying through the air, they don't think about what came before. They just see Rachel Zegler breaking down and they make up their minds. But here's the real question: who is filming and why? Rehearsals are usually private, phones off, cameras banned. So how did this footage surface? How did it land in the inboxes of media outlets just hours before the lawsuit was filed? And why did it leak right after Rachel's countersuit threatened to flip the entire narrative? That's where things get interesting, because Rachel's legal team claims this wasn't a meltdown. It was a setup, a calculated play. She was provoked, isolated, undermined, and the second she reacted, someone hit record. If that's true, this clip isn't a mistake. It's strategy. And someone planned it, which means this entire story, the lawsuit, the leaked memos, the blurred video, could be part of something much darker, a coordinated character takedown. And if Rachel can prove that in court, she doesn't just walk away from this clean. She walks away with a legal win, a public redemption, and a whole new narrative. The actress who didn't spiral but survived. Of course, that's still a big if. Because the producers have their own case, their own witnesses, their own paper trail, and they're not backing down either. They're framing the clip as a final warning ignored, the last in a series of red flags that couldn't be tolerated any longer. So who's telling the truth? That depends on what leaks next. Because in stories like this, the court of public opinion often decides the verdict before the lawyers do. And right now, the internet is holding its breath, waiting to see if another clip drops, if another voice speaks up, if another cast member steps forward. So if you think this is over, you're not paying attention, because the next chapter could change everything. Subscribe, turn on notifications, because in this story, the biggest reveal might not be a video. It might be the silence that comes.